Hey guys, my name is Kyla and welcome back to my plantita channel. If you're new here, don't forget to click the subscribe button below. In today's video, I wanted to talk about the soil mix that I use. Just a disclaimer, I am not a botanist or an expert by any means, but I just wanted to share the soil mix that I use and that has helped me avoid root rot since I'm quite the heavy waterer. I love my plants too much, so I call this my base soil mix because I do change the proportions depending on the plant, which I determine by researching before I repot. However, if there's not much information about what media that plant prefers, I kind of just wing it or I just use this base soil mix. Also, I'd like to note that this is a soilless mix, meaning that it's made up of organic matter except actual soil. They're considered sterile because they don't contain the usual bacteria and fungi found in regular soil. This helps prevent your plants from being contaminated by soil-borne diseases, fungi, and bacteria. Of course, this doesn't actually mean that you're completely clear of all of these soil-borne pests. However, it does kind of give you a clean slate to work with. Due to its components, they are also lighter in weight and they don't compact like soil over time. So anyway, I'll first talk about all the main components I use and why I use each one. The first component is rice hull, which is locally known as ipa. Rice hull, the tough outer layer of the rice grain, is actually a byproduct from the process of milling rice. They're a dense source of carbon which, when composted, can increase the water and nutrient holding capacity of soil and improve soil aeration. I like using this because it helps provide good drainage. It's very light, it's very accessible as we are a rice-loving country, and you also get to help reuse what is essentially considered as waste. The second component is cocoa peat. I think by now most people know or have an idea about what cocoa peat is, but just as a refresher for those who don't know or are very new, cocoa peat is a natural fiber made from the inner pith of the coconut husk. Basically, it's what remains after you extract the cocoa fibers from a coconut husk. The cocoa fibers are the hairy looking things that most people turn into ropes or doormats. Just for reference, let me show you the different coconut husk byproducts in this picture. It's a nice component to add because it's naturally antifungal, light, and biodegrades slowly. I use this mainly for its water holding capacity. It actually doesn't have a significant nutrient value, but it can help the soil retain the nutrients and make them available to your plants when they need them. It's also a renewable media. As you know, we have so much coconuts in this country because we love our buko, so we're really lucky in that regard. Unlike peat moss, which is very popular in other countries but fortunately very uncommon here, they actually look similar, except peat moss are from moss bogs, and since they're a non-renewable resource, although technically they're renewable, but it takes forever for them to grow back. The over-harvesting of peat moss actually has a bad impact on the environment and contributes to climate change. So if you're not from the Philippines, I think that cocoa peat is a very good alternative that is super similar to peat moss. So anyway, that's why cocoa peat is a very good component to use in your soilless mix. And just like rice hull, it makes use of what was once considered a useless byproduct. The third component I'm going to be talking about are cocoa chips or cocoa cubes, however you call them. Obviously, it's very similar to cocoa peat as it's made from the same material. The only difference is that cocoa cubes or chips are made by cutting up the dried coconut husks into smaller cubes. They basically also provide excellent drainage and nutrient holding capacity. I really just use this in my mix to make it a bit chunkier as well. So the fourth component is pumice, or what I like to call the poor man's perlite. Though I've actually seen in some international groups that they call perlite the poor man's pumice, because in my country, pumice is actually cheaper than perlite. You can comment down below which one is cheaper in your country. I'd like to know, I'm just curious. So anyway, pumice is actually a lightweight volcanic rock that is made up of tiny air bubbles. It provides excellent drainage and air circulation, and it also helps improve the soil structure. I usually get the munggo size. I think that's the most convenient for my plants. The fifth component is perlite. It's actually also a volcanic rock like pumice, but it's much lighter and porous. I actually use perlite for the same purpose as pumice. I only like using it because since it's smaller and lighter, it's perfect for those smaller plants. I also like adding perlite because sometimes adding too much pumice actually makes it hard for me to check the moisture levels in the soil. I also tend to switch out pumice with perlite completely, especially when I'm repotting something small. The last component I like adding is vermicast. I think everyone knows that worm poop is super good for your plants. That's why they call it black gold. Worm castings are a nutritive organic fertilizer, rich in humus, NPK, beneficial microbes, and micronutrients. So I don't think I need to explain any further why I use this. I'm gonna show you how I mix it all together. So I'm gonna be repotting an Epipremnum aureum marble queen, otherwise known as the marble queen pothos. The media this plant was growing in was 100% rice hull and maybe a little cocoa peat, I think. So I decided to reuse it. Usually I don't use the soil mix that the plant comes in from the nursery because it's usually like just straight up soil or mud or something. But for this particular plant, I already know the nursery well, so I already know that their soil mix, even though it's mostly rice hull, is clean. So anyway, just a reminder, when you're removing the old soil from the plant, you have to do it very carefully. Just tickle away that old media. But I suggest you keep some of the old media stuck to the roots to retain some of that familiar good bacteria it's used to, so it doesn't get too shocked. As you can see in the video, the roots are quite healthy, so I'm very pleased. Again, if it's poop soil though, I rinse the roots completely with water before I repot. I try to repot my plants at least a week after they arrive. Maybe not the best thing to do when there's a possibility it'll die back just a bit, but since I keep most of my plants indoors, it's safer for me to repot it right away to a lighter, well-draining mix compared to waiting for a week, and it might actually do worse than that time. So anyway, on to mixing the new soil mix. I'll start with some rice hull or the ipa. Then the cocoa peat, then the cocoa chips. For the cocoa stuff, I usually buy them separately, but since the plant supplies have been out of stock recently, I've had to settle for mixed bags, as you can see in the video. So I don't really measure anything, but I kind of just try to estimate how much I'm gonna put in. Next, we have pumice. So this is the munggo size, as I showed earlier. And then onto the perlite. Just be careful not to inhale the tiny dust particles because it's very dusty. I know it's bad for you if you inhale a lot of it. And lastly, the vermicast. Okay, whoops. Camera let me down there. It's not focusing properly. There we go. There you go. Now we mix them all together. Yum, as if we're baking a cake. So just try to mix it well as much as possible. But of course, nothing like getting your hands dirty to get them well incorporated. And then ta-da! Now all you gotta do is get your pot, your plant, and then pot it up. I always try to put them in the center, but it's really hard to do that when the plant is not symmetrical because the other plants. Okay, just push it in a bit to make sure there are no empty spaces. Okay, then there we go. Looking good. The last step I do is I of course water and fertilize the plant. So just a hashtag shameless plug, I use my own fertilizer, Jungle Fuel. I'll put the link down below if y'all want to check it out. So that's it for the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, just to make it clear, I'm not saying that this is a cure-all for all your plants. That's why I call it my base soil mix, because you can change the proportions depending on the particular plant, especially depending on where your plant is located in your home. I think that's a very important thing to remember, that a huge factor in changing the proportion depends on your lighting conditions, your air circulation, humidity, and all the other factors that may affect your plant's growth. I like to keep it on the drier side, if you've noticed, because I keep actually almost all of my plants indoors. Aside from me being an overwaterer, I'm super prunning already about overwatering because I have had my own fair share of root rot in my plants, and I'm absolutely terrified of that now. So I like to stay on the drier and safer side of things. And I think my plants are actually pretty used to kind of being thirsty, I guess, to their limit. So I like to amend my soil with pumice and perlite and other very well draining components so that I can kind of help the soil dry out quicker or at a more normal pace as if they were outside. So again, this is a good base soil mix, but it's also up to you, your research, your observations with your plants to determine what proportions you're actually going to use. So yeah, I hope this helps you in making your own soil mix. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to comment if you have any questions, suggestions, or requests for the next videos. Also, if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. I'm also very active on Instagram, so if you have a Plantstagram, I'm the Tiny Jungle. You can just send me a DM and I can answer anything that you'd like to know about plants in general. Thanks for watching. I hope none of your plants die this week. See you in the next one.